Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to welcome you along to another of our A-Level Geography Revision Blasts. Tonight we're looking at global systems and global governance. Good evening to anybody who is watching us live. Good evening to anybody who's watching us on replay. If you are with us live, of course, we would love to see your responses to our questions. Do use the chat window on YouTube so that we can see what you've got to say for our fast-paced, quick activities. I'm joined tonight by Suzanne on the left-hand side of the screen and Catherine on the right-hand side. Good evening, both.
Hiya.
I was lost for words just for a second then. One of your students is with us tonight, Catherine. Is that right? I'm just seeing the message coming up on the screen.
Yeah, I've got Grace here, and she's absolutely fantastic. So that's lovely to have her here. I might have some others hiding away as well. You never know.
Yeah. Good to see all of your students, Catherine. Suzanne, what are we looking at tonight then?
Right, well, we've got a very, very busy night tonight, but lots of great games that we're going to be playing. So we're going to be looking kind of at some of the causes of globalization, but a little bit more of a focus perhaps on the impacts. We're also going to focus a little bit on global governance, so international organisations, how they operate, thinking about how they might promote stability and growth. So we're kind of going to delve into little different bits of the syllabus, perhaps ones that we think haven't been covered quite as sort of comprehensively. So yeah, it's going to be a good session, lots of great games.
Good stuff. So it may be coming up in the exams, which are not very far away.
Yeah. So both, I guess, for Year 12s who are joining us to do their summer exams, but very much those Year 13s who we are really sending out good thoughts to, because in the next couple of months.
A quick reminder to anybody who is watching tonight, as soon as this live stream finishes, the PowerPoint that Suzanne and Catherine are about to use will be available for download. I believe it includes some extras tonight as well, some Easter eggs, Suzanne.
It does. It has got quite a few extra activities that we've written, and we just don't have time tonight. But your teachers or you can do it all on your own and have lots of fun with them.
Wonderful. Let's get started then, shall we?
Fantastic. Right. Okay. So we're going to start with a nice, easy kind of task to get us lulled into thinking about some of our issues and kind of key terms that we might be thinking of when looking at global systems and global governance. So what I'd love you to do is in the chat box, take a look at this photograph. It's actually a photo that's been taken, and I'm just going to double check it. It's in Thailand. Actually, obviously you can see it's a manufacturing industry over there. I'd like you to try to write down as many words or geographical terms or topics that you can associate with that picture shown. So I'm going to be checking the chat box. Oh, and I've now got a line along the bottom of the chat box. Oh my God. So think about, let's get sweatshop AQA to be. Ensuring, brilliant. Thank you very much. And we've got investors, absolutely. Yep, cheap manufacturing labour, lower wages, perhaps. Foreign direct investment. Oh, amazing. Loads of investment in people. You guys are on fire tonight. Wonderful. Well, there's absolutely. And I've got something about deindustrialisation. Fantastic. So, shall we have a little look at some things that I think we might come up with and see if we've managed to cover all of those? John? Oh, we've still got more to go. Wow, a lot. Right, shall we move on, John? Let's have a little look. Is it moving on? Here we go. So I think everybody got most of those. I think the only one I haven't seen is perhaps comparative advantage, where one country or one location does something because it has a kind of it's a better advantage, not absolute advantage, but it can do it at a lower cost than somewhere else. And we've had lots of stuff about flows of capital, absolutely. And remember some of those TNCs, the leakage where they send the money back to the host country. I think I saw a multiplier effect, and obviously lots of this is wrapped up with that injustices part of the syllabus and thinking about actually whether there is equality and whether global systems promote equality or whether they promote injustices. Right, okay, if we can move on, we'll have a look at the next slide. Okay, so this really is about what globalization is, and you really need to get your heads around exactly what it is, and have a really great definition ready up your sleeve, because many of your essays or many of your responses are probably going to start with something linked to what globalization is. And I emphasize that really it isn't just about money, because I think a lot of people think about the integration of economies, which is very, very important, but it's also the integration of society. It's the flow of people, it's the flow of ideas, it's the flow of culture, as well as the capital and the goods, which is what we often think of when we think of globalization. And obviously, all of those things, both economic and social, will lead to real interconnectedness and interdependence with those countries which are open to trade and open to globalization, which means sharing of world cultures. Now, sometimes that can be a really enriching experience and cultures can really develop, but we also perhaps have links with our changing places where we think about maybe how Americanization or Westernization actually dilutes some cultures and placelessness. If you remember that concept from our changing places, where sometimes these sort of global chains can come into high streets and really damage the kind of authenticness and sense of place of a high street or a city. So also thinking about transfers of technologies, I think that's one that as well often gets forgotten about, and actually how important they are in sharing culture. I'm sure lots of you are on social media and now can access kind of videos from around the globe, but also thinking about how that can also create some global issues like issues with the environment, crime, kind of inter-country crime, violence and terrorism. So it's a really kind of wide remit for globalization, and you have to think more than just those economic and kind of ideas and flows of money. Right, if we could just move on. Wonderful. Right, so we have a Beat the Teacher.
That's over to me, I think.
It is. I was going to just say, I was just checking my notes. It is over to you.
Right, absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Suzanne. That's really lovely hearing that sort of overview of globalization. And of course, it's really brilliant if students can keep a bit of an eye on what's going on in the news, because we've got so much going on at the moment with things like, social media protests going on in the US on campuses, and videos spreading around the world in the click of a button. And, it's really powerful what can be achieved through social media, but it can also be something that can be quite scary as well. So with this Beat the Teacher, we're looking at transnational corporations, and you will be reading this and you'll be thinking, there's some things that aren't right with this. So the challenge is for you to look at this paragraph and you need to spot what is wrong with it. So first of all, spot the errors and think about what the correct words would be instead. So fantastic to see that some people are already suggesting some of the errors that we could be seeing here. Right, absolutely brilliant there. So I can see, right, brilliant. So we got, you've got SOD is picking up a good one there about growth. We've got Elizabeth thinking about it not just being 2 countries, maybe it's being more. We can check these in a moment. Job losses, maybe that shouldn't be job losses, maybe it should be something else. Tegan looking really good, and Sam as well. Izzy, well done. And Philippa talking about economic growth. These are great ideas. So, right, okay, John, can we have a little look now at what the errors were and see how many people have picked up? Right, brilliant. So, so social is an error there, and the idea of 2, and the idea of job losses. And then one I didn't see many picking up there is the local trade. So let's get the correct answer up here, and then I'm going to go through that one. Right, brilliant. So it says there, transnational corporations are key drivers of economic growth and development on a global, national and local scale, with operations spanning multiple countries. So not just 2. It could be that you've only got a couple of countries. It could be that you've got the headquarters in one country and production in another country, but often we've got many, many countries that are involved. And these enterprises contribute positively to job creation, it says here, technical innovation and transfer of skills and knowledge. So when you've got a company coming in maybe to a host country and it's bringing new technology, it's bringing skills, they're training the staff up, that may then be transferred to other businesses which are in the same area, having a really good benefit. They play a significant role in the global economy, accounting for 80% of global value chains, dominating the 20 trillion international trade annually. So it's not local trade there, it's looking on an international scale. And very important when we're considering this topic is to think about these different scales. Think about what's happening in the local area in a nation, but also globally. Right, you did absolutely brilliantly. Some of you were saying how you smashed it there. You definitely did. Absolutely fantastic stuff. So, time for another challenge. So this next one is a 60-second challenge, and this one is about flows of money. So a big thing in this topic is to understand about flows of different things, and this one is thinking about flows of capital, flows of money. Can you link these up? So type in to the chat box now. You can just put in the letters and the numbers that they go with. Let's see what you can come up with. Right, so we've got A being a Polish foreign worker linked to transferring their wages parents in Poland. Which form would that be? What number would that go with? Wow, flying up now. Lots and lots of suggestions. Yeah, well done. Wow. Lots of people commented on the remittances there. Right, let's have a little look at the others. People from Guinea, what could those be? Oh, fantastic. You've got Florence suggesting listing all 5 of them, I think. Fantastic. Wow, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So let's see the answers now. Let's see it all matched up. Yep. So remittances when wages are being sent to the parents in Poland, Google investing millions of dollars, being foreign direct investment, having 680,000 Filipinos living in the UAE. So lots of migration going on there. The sending medical equipment over to deal with the Ebola outbreak would be AIDS, and Volkswagen in Mexico sending its profits back to Germany. That is repatriation of profits, which is also known as a leakage. So it's like the money that's being made in the host country is leaking back to the country that the big transnational corporation first came to. Absolutely brilliant. They're doing brilliantly, aren't they, Suzanne?
They are indeed. Yeah, yeah. Really pleased to see how fast people are today. Right.
That's amazing.
Okay. So, a very quick true and false. I'm sure we're going to have some very speedy answers on this one. So, Apple, lots of you might have studied that as a transnational corporation, is an example of a horizontally integrated TNC. Do you think that is true or is that false? Let's see some coming up. Oh, we've got some people think it's true. Okay, I think there seems to be a consensus on here. Right, let's have a look. If you could reveal, John. Oh, you might want to have a little look. So it is actually vertically integrated. So they're buying different sections to actually allow them to have different aspects of the kind of supply chain. So just have a little look at that one. Those who thought it was true. Right, let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so this is deregulation of financial markets leading to an increase in flows of capital across borders. Now, what do you think this one might be? True or false? We've got some more true this time. Okay, I think you might be luckier this time with your true. Let's have a little look, John, and a reveal. It is indeed. So that really instigated huge amounts of FDI from different countries, made it far easier to move flows of money across. Because before there were quite a lot of restrictions and it could be quite difficult, a lot of red tape and quite sort of time consuming, but it's made much, much easier by this deregulation. Okay, right, if we could have the next question, please. Comparative advantage means that a country can produce a good or service more cheaply and efficiently than another. Okay, let's have a little look. Are we going to go, who's going to go true? Who's going to go false on this one? Oh, we've got some trues coming up. I think that's where, oh, we've got one false. A little bit of a mix. Okay, should we have a little look? Okay, that is indeed true. So that means that we often have kind of a specialization. It leads to specialization. So countries that are particularly good at one service or providing a good will specialize in that, whereas another country will specialize in something else. It's meant to make kind of resources more efficient, or efficient use of resources. So it's meant to be better, but one could also have a counter argument and say that actually that means that all these different goods and services are being created around the world. Transport's more expensive, carbon emissions. So there's, as in geography, there's always an argument for and there's also argument against, which is why we're so good at evaluating. Right, let's have a look at the next true or false. Okay, so a trade deficit is where a country's value of imports is more than its earnings from exports. Where are we going to go with this one? True or false? Oh, I've got waiting to have a few pop up. Oh, I've got a mix coming up here. So maybe more falses than trues. Shall we have a little look, John? It is true. Okay. It's quite significant for some countries to kind of like owe more money, especially if you're importing more than you're exporting, you're going to go into debt. You've also got to think about the type of things, perhaps, than the value of some of those imports and exports. Remember, when you're looking at perhaps least developed countries, many of those are kind of trapped in a cycle of exporting raw materials, which are very low value, and then have to import in manufactured goods, which are much more high value. They've had more value added to them, so end up being more expensive and in a trade deficit. Right. Okay, I think we've got one more, I think, here. So there are 6 global commons. Is this true or false? Think about this one. How are we going to go with this one? Have I got a few coming up? Oh, I have quite a few saying false. If you can, a challenge I'm throwing down to you, see if you can work out what the global commons are, write down the ones that you do know. I've got the right answers coming up. Some of you are managing to work out how many there should be. Should we have a little look? It's false, and I have had the correct answer pop up, so there are 4. Okay, so we've got 1 coming up, Antarctica, well done, Gomi. We've got space and the sea and the atmosphere. So yeah, between you all, you've all got the 4 global commons. Arguably, some people think of a 5th one, and there's kind of a question mark over this, whether we should be looking at the kind of digital World Wide Web as something that ought to be a global commons, but not necessarily been accepted yet as the 5th global commons. Right, okay, if we can go on to the next slide. Brilliant, thank you. So thinking about global governance, some of those questions, particularly that one thinking about global governance, global commons, it brings us quite nicely onto global governance, because we have to think quite carefully about the different international institutions and the different organisations that we have developed to try to govern so many different nations. Everybody's got different kind of viewpoints, different interests, different ways in which they want to conduct themselves. But ultimately, to be able to function as a planet, we need to have some kind of consensus, and we do need to have some kind of supranational agreements. And we do have quite a large number of different international organisations that do that. So people like the organisation like the United Nations, which has lots of umbrella organisations operating within them. You've got the World Bank and the IMF. Please make sure when you're doing your revision, you know the difference between those two, because they do slightly different things. And also think really carefully about how institutions influence at a different range of scales. So again, going back to maybe you're changing places, it could be that both your local or your contrasting place or distant place had aspects where global decisions, maybe around climate change or around sustainable development goals, have impacted on decisions that your local council has made, about decisions that are kind of made for transport within the UK, or industrial strategies within both the region that you live. So, for example, for me, it's the Southeast, thinking about lots of ways in which nationally those institutions can impact, and obviously its global impact as well. We can also include within that TNCs. Now, that's kind of a big question mark over TNCs and how they govern, because they govern in potentially the way they can twist kind of governments to agree with some of the things they want. Otherwise, they'll withdraw their industry from those locations. So it's not necessarily always a positive thing, the kind of power that TNCs have. But also we've got NGOs, non-governmental organisations. They're often charities and can be far more successful at times because they're not as unwieldy and can be much more agile and respond to perhaps emergency issues or work on a very, very local scale that some of those big international organisations, for example, like the World Health Organization, just doesn't have that nimble way in which they can operate because of the large organisational bureaucracy that comes with it. So be really clear about the different kind of both the scale at which these institutions can influence things, but also thinking about the different types of institutions and how they kind of the way in which they're structured can impact how they can be effective, or alternatively, how they're not effective. Right. If we can have a little look, I think I'm back over to Catherine now.
Yeah, it's over to me now. Thank you very much. So as Suzanne was saying just now, a big part of this is the ability to evaluate. Whether you're thinking about global systems or global governance, you need to be able to evaluate your points. And so we're going to look at a line of an argument that you could make maybe in an essay, and then we're going to see how we are going to evaluate it. So let's see the first line of our argument. So the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, launched in September 2000, lifted 1 billion people out of poverty through improving education, and has reduced child mortality, combated diseases, and eradicated much poverty and hunger. So you might, in your essay, be writing some enthusiastic points about the Millennium Development Goals. Let's see what we're going to do for our evaluation. Right, which one's going to come up? Right. Okay. So, however, has come up. So, what negative views could you give of this? So, Millennium Development Goals in 2000, they finished in 2015. And so, some people might say, yay, these are absolutely brilliant. Look at what they did. But what could you say to evaluate this? What could you say to give the other point of view? So, let's see in the chat box. Some of you have got lots of ideas. So, what could you say maybe wasn't so effective in relation to the Millennium Development Goals? When they came up with the Sustainable Development Goals, they did it in a slightly different way. So, maybe they'd learned. We can also criticise the Sustainable Development Goals. Right. Brilliant. So, we've got. So we've got big divides in areas. Yeah, we've got not all the Millennium Development Goals being met, no enforcement for them. A big thing there were being people still in poverty. So, yeah, I can see that we've got someone there talking about Uganda, a country that I study a lot, saying that there was only a little progress made towards a lot of the goals, not all completed, can widen the development gap. Right, absolutely. That's great stuff. So let's see what we've got coming up on the answer on the screen now. So, yeah, so there was progress, but not for everyone. One of the things that people are bound to do when you are asked to try and make an improvement is you're going to think, what are the easy wins? Where are the areas we can invest money so that we can make rapid wins? We can say, hey, look at us, we're making improvements. So often urban areas benefited more than rural areas. And if there were minority groups living in more remote regions or areas of conflict, they tended to get left behind. Got the example of northern Nigeria here. There's also been a lot of issues when we were looking at the idea of not everywhere benefiting. We can see that we've got that area in the centre of Africa that tended to have issues with not seeing the improvements that maybe other parts of the world saw. So evaluation, massively important, really well done.
Right, okay, so we're going to go on and have a look at our 20 marker, which I think is where everyone gets a little bit kind of, oh, what's the 20 marker going to be this time? Well, we're going to just have a little look through one, which is about global institutions, as that's what we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes. So here's a 20 mark question. Assess the extent to which global institutions are effective at promoting growth and stability. Now, I'm going to say to you, you must bug your questions. I'm sure your teachers in school have said this. Box the command word, underline the keywords, glance again and read through to make sure you really understand it. So John is, by the power of magic, going to show you the command word, which is all nicely boxed up there. So this is assess. As you know, these questions are about evaluation. It's about weighing up, so that assess command will always be, or some evaluation command will always be in a 20 mark question. And we're going to be thinking about different global institutions and how they might be effective at promoting growth and stability. But of course, as a kind of evaluative question, it might be that we would consider that in some places they have fallen short of promoting growth and stability, and maybe even making situations worse, depending on your kind of named example and case study. Right, so if we can just move on, we'll have a look at the way in which this would be allocated marks. So if the next slide can come up, John. Here we go. So you should know by now that you have a even split of the 20 marks into AO1, which is your knowledge and understanding, and AO2, which is kind of analysis and evaluation. So for this AO1, you need to know about a global institution or a couple of global institutions and how it plays a role in governance. Now, that could be in relation to economic growth, so thinking about financial things like the IMF or the World Bank, or it could be something more linked to promoting peace and stability. Remember, that question STEM was about growth and stability. The UN, of course, as I've said before, has multiple organisations under its umbrella. So you could choose a couple of different ones from that and consider what some of the characteristics of those. So once you've worked out kind of what global institutions you're going to use, you need to think about how it is being, or using different strategies to try to reduce poverty. Also to promote sustainable development, and that links in with Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations. It might be that your institution is trying to facilitate trade or stabilize financial markets, as in the IMF, and address global challenges. So it might be trying to reduce inequalities. Now, each of those institutions will have very specific projects and programs, and all of those will have relative successes and failures. Now, it's really important as well to think about your AO1, your spatial dimension. So you may want to think about a policy in a country, and as Catherine was talking about, that urban-rural split, because very often urban areas are hit. It's much easier to put a project or make an improvement in an urban area where the population density is really high, so it's going to benefit, a very large number of people in comparison to rural areas, particularly where it might be quite remote. And also thinking about, does it create inequalities within a country, or is it trying to reduce those? A temporal dimension there is also important to think about. So it may be that you want to look at short-term impacts compared to long-term impacts, particularly some of the long-term impacts, for example, that the World Bank placed on some countries, created very unsuitable courses for them to kind of move forward. So it wasn't necessarily in the country's best interests, but very often those loans, the key requirements, they will paid back rather than actually what was best for the country. Right, so if we can to the next one. Sorry, I've got lots of different questions popping up. I quite managed to see all of them at the same time. I don't know if yes, I've got a nice one there about the UN peacekeepers. They did. I don't know if I think I'm Stealing Evolution. I suspect you've read Disaster by Choice to find that one out. So that's really good. Right, if we can have a look at the AO2, please, John. The next slide. Oh, sorry, this one, yeah. So your 10 marks for AO2 is about your applying knowledge and understanding, to a novel situation, and making sure that you've got lots of analytical writing and evaluative writing. So once you've decided which global institution or institutions, you need to make sure that you are analysing their impact, thinking about the positives and the negatives. You've got some examples there of the UN and the Millennium Development Goals, which were replaced by the Sustainable Development Goals. There's quite a big switch between those, as Catherine said, of what they were focusing on. We've got the World Health Organization, and maybe its response to COVID-19. It also responded to Ebola outbreaks. And also one that is really, really interesting one to look at is perhaps UN intervention in conflict zones, because there's a lot of information out there about perhaps how they've been ineffective in some locations, and in others they've ended up having to stay there for really extended periods of time. And at what point does a country, or do you remove that kind of intervention to promote peace? Obviously, the importance is evaluating the relative effectiveness and the success of the programme, showing that you understand the shortcomings or failures to promote that peace and stability. And you could for this kind of analytical aspect. Think about external factors which might prevent it from being effective as it could be. So COVID-19 has played havoc with all sorts of different projects that were in the pipeline or things that were happening. So it's really slowed down the Sustainable Development Goals. And obviously we have regions going into conflict, and that's going to have a massive impact on some of the achievements of those policies where it's literally become impossible to govern those locations. So that's a way in which you perhaps would look. So be really clear when you're kind of creating your revision notes, your flashcards, that you are creating around a global institution, thinking about its specific program, and what it wants to achieve, and then evaluating the kind of successes and failures. So if you prep that and this question comes out, you'll be laughing. Right, okay, so I think that moves us on. I think, Catherine, you're finishing off, aren't you, with these multiple choice questions?
Yeah, it's my turn again. I've also been tapping away in the chat because there's some brilliant questions that are coming up. And
I've got screens going on.
It's great as well that there's so many people that are chipping in to help each other. So really well done to you guys. Absolutely fantastic. So, right, we got there. What is the purpose of special and differential treatment, SDT agreements? So have a little look there. Getting a lot of people that are putting D there. Got a couple of Bs. Right, let's have a little look at the answer. Yeah, so one of the big things that you've got in this specification is thinking about how you've got some countries which are going to find it very difficult to get access to global trading systems and the impact that has on those countries. And so by having special and differential treatment agreements, this can give those countries a little bit of a foot in the door so that they've got more of a chance to be able to take part in global trading systems. And this may well be a way to approach, supporting countries in development, which could be more effective than ideas like aid. So let's have a look at the next question. Right, what is the primary focus of fair trade? So always really important when fair trade comes up, not to confuse it with free trade, because that can cause some problems. So have a little look at that. Right, okay, so, right. Okay, lots of people saying A here. Fantastic. Can we see the answer? Right, so fair trade is about promoting greater equity and justice in global trading systems. It doesn't create lower prices because often by the time you've got the fair trade premium, that might actually put the prices up slightly, but that is going to then mean that you've got more equity for the people that are involved in producing the raw materials, growing the crops and the cocoa beans. Right, so let's have a look at the next question. Which of these products is the fair trademark typically associated with? So when you go shopping and you see that very distinctive fair trademark, what sort of thing is it often on? Let's have a little look. Right, lots of people suggesting A. Yeah, so let's see the answer. Yeah, so we've got there coffee, tea, chocolate, sugar, bananas, and cotton. You often see the fair trademark associated with. You can sometimes, though, see clothing. There's a company called People Tree that is big on providing fair trade clothing. So it is something that has grown over the years, which is fantastic to see. Okay, so I think that is bringing us, is there one more, or is that bringing us to the end?
I think there's just this one more question, number 4.
Oh, brilliant. Why do fair trade organizations...
2 more questions.
2 more, brilliant. Why do fair trade organizations providing technical assistance and training small-scale farmers and workers? I think that should say provide. Why do fair trade organizations provide technical assistance and training to small-scale farmers and workers? So have a little look. What do you think? Lots of people saying C now. Let's have a little look at the answers. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. They don't want to make products more expensive, but that can be something that happens because of the producers getting more money from this. But increasing the competitiveness in world markets is really important. Like we said before, big thing in the specification is thinking about access to markets. And so fair trade organizations are trying to help the producers to be able to get into that world market by making them more competitive. Okay, so I think there's one more question. Right. So which of these is an issue related to increased environmental interdependence? So again, a word that can confuse people sometimes there. Interdependence is the word in the question there, not independence, and that can confuse people sometimes. So what are we thinking about now? Right. Okay. So we've got a little bit of a mix of answers here, but lots of A's coming through. So let's see the answer. Right. So yeah, climate change. Climate change is something that runs right the way through all the different topics of this specification. And we need to be thinking all the time about when we've got this interdependence, when we've got the idea of climate change. You know, we've got actions that we're taking which are causing climate change due to things like transport between different countries. And then we've got all of us experiencing the climate change, and the fact that climate change doesn't know about boundaries, it doesn't know about nations. But of course, some parts of the world are experiencing much greater impacts than others. So fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, you've been absolutely brilliant. And like I say, thank you very much for your comments and for helping each other out so much. We do have on the Tutor2U website some ideas that you might want to look at. There's some information about global systems with unequal flows. There's also a lovely section which is looking at governance in Antarctica. So that would be really worth having a look at. So thank you ever so much for taking part today.
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Thank you, of course. Massive thank you, of course, to Suzanne and Catherine for delivering those fantastic questions tonight. And a huge, huge, massive thumbs up to everybody who contributed their answers. And we saw loads and loads tonight. Wonderful. The vast majority were correct, which is really good to see. But lots of food for thought as well, I think, for those of you who are thinking about your exams and the topic coming up. Now, we have another live stream next Monday. I know it's bank holiday, but it's still your exams coming up very, very soon. So we'll be back on with you. We'll be back on. Is it not bank holiday next week? Have I got that wrong?
No, it is. Yeah, we don't stop for bank holidays.
We don't. Thank you, Susanna. I wondered if I'd been factually incorrect, but there we go. We're back next Monday, so do join us then. It's been wonderful to see so many of you tonight.
And we've also got coasts next week as well, haven't we?
Oh yes, after our little technical error a couple of weeks ago, we'll be running the coastals one in just next week, next Wednesday, isn't it? Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, so thank you to those of you that are keen to get involved with the coasts one, and we will make sure we do that one for you.
It will definitely be working next Wednesday. Wonderful, brilliant. Thanks again, and we'll see you all very, very soon. Goodbye, everybody.